best part about having a big dog was that I finally had someone to go on long hikes with me, and Maddie couldn't have been happier than when she was out in nature with me. There was only one time that we left a hike and ended up never going back to that spot, but that's for good reason. I had heard about this patch of woods about an hour and a half from my house that apparently was filled with trails, including some that had been closed for years and just reopened. So I was really excited to get out there and explore a bit with my dog, and the first trail we decided to go on was one of those newly reopened trails. Maddie was loving it at first as she took in all of the new smells that she hadn't experienced before, and I liked it because the trail didn't have a lot of roots for me to trip over, so it was a really laid-back hike at first. That all started to change though as we made our way further down the path and the foliage started to get thicker and thicker. The tree cover became so thick that it was hard for the sun to break through the canopy, which also made the temperature drop significantly. But for the most part, my dog seemed to be enjoying herself, so I figured that we would keep walking. I was starting to wish I hadn't though when after another 10 minutes of walking, I started to feel this strange sensation wash over me. I kept looking over my shoulders as I walked with Maddie because it was starting to feel like something was following me. I assumed it was just other hikers, but I couldn't see anyone whenever I looked back. But the further I walked, the more I felt like I was being followed. My heart began to pound, and I could tell that even Maddie was starting to act a bit strange. She kept stopping in her tracks and looking around as if she had heard something, but again, every time I looked, there was nothing to be seen. And just as I was about to turn us around and walk back, it was like my decision was made for me. Right before I decided to turn around, I saw something strange looking on a tree to my right. I walked over to it to get a closer look, and I was confused by what I was seeing. It looked like there was a symbol of sorts carved into the tree and then painted with bright yellow paint. I looked around to see if there were any more of those symbols around, but I couldn't see any within the vicinity. I looked back at the tree and wondered why someone would mark that tree and not any other ones. That was when Maddie started to bark. She surprised me and made me jump when she started, and I turned my attention to her to see what was wrong. I saw that she was looking up at the tree that I was standing underneath, so I looked up too, and what I saw sent both of us running. The symbol in the tree must have been some sort of strange marking for someone to remember that specific tree by, because when I looked up, I saw that there was a body hanging from one of the branches high up. I screamed and then ran as fast as I could with Maddie right by my side. It took us almost an hour to make it back to our car, but once I was there, the first thing I did was call the police and then the wildlife department that managed that section of the trails. After the police and park rangers found the body, they took it out of the tree and discovered that it wasn't a suicide as they had initially believed when I told them a body was hanging in a tree. They discovered multiple knife wounds and a single gunshot wound. The officer I spoke to said that they couldn't say much at the time, but they believed that the body had been hanging there for at least a week before I found it. That trail was closed down again after the discovery, and to my knowledge, they haven't attempted to open it again. And rightfully so. Even before I found the body, there was something about that trail that made me feel uncomfortable. When I left my boyfriend and moved into my own place, the first thing I did was get a dog because he wouldn't let me have one. They say dogs are a man's best friend, but they can be a girl's too. My dog was too trusting though, and I learned that the hard way. It started shortly after I got my dog. I started walking him on the same route around my neighborhood every day, and out of nowhere, one day as I was walking Max, I noticed that there was someone standing on the corner in the direction I was walking, and they had a little dog of their own. I said hi, and they introduced themselves as Peter and asked if they could join us on our walk. I figured it would be good to get to know my neighbors, so I accepted. Plus, Max seemed to like Peter's dog, so I didn't see a problem with it. Peter started coming with us on walks almost every day, and it seemed like he knew my schedule because anytime I would walk Max, he would be waiting for us. I tried not to be weirded out by it, but it was hard not to be, as Peter seemed to get more and more comfortable around me. It started out as him just walking closer and closer, but I swear there was one time that I caught him trying to smell my hair. I started to really get the creeps from him, but I couldn't think of a way to nicely tell him that I'd prefer to walk my dog alone. I wish I had though, because after a while, things started to get worse. And then one day, he finally took it too far for my comfort level, and as we were walking, he went to hold my hand. Now, that wouldn't have been a problem by itself if he had let my hand go when I told him that I wasn't comfortable holding hands with him, but instead, he seemed to grab on tighter. I tried to pull my hand away, but he just wouldn't let go. And when I finally screamed at him to let go of me, Max ended up stepping in. I had never heard my dog growl like that before, but once he had, Peter made sure to let my hand go. That being said, he didn't seem like he was actually afraid of Max though, because after he let go of my hand, he went right down to pet Max. I looked at him with disgust as he tried telling my dog that it was okay. But what made it worse was that Max seemed to be totally fine with him after that, and he wasn't on edge after Peter pet him. I got a weird feeling from that interaction and made an excuse to get home with my dog. Once I did, I started thinking about different routes that I could take Max during his walks that wouldn't pass by Peter's house. But that night, I learned that it wouldn't have mattered. I spent the rest of the day trying to forget about that creepy interaction with Peter, but by the time I was getting ready for bed, I still hadn't been able to shake the eerie feeling. I was laying in my bed for a few hours, tossing and turning as I tried to get to sleep, but right away when I was finally about to, my eyes shot open at the sound of someone walking through my hallway. I sat up in my bed and wondered why Max hadn't barked or alerted me to an intruder in my house, but before they even got to the door, I realized who it was. That didn't stop me from screaming in terror as Peter opened my bedroom door. Right then, I knew that he had been using those walks to get close to me and make sure that Max was comfortable enough with him to not attack on sight. Peter made his way into my room as I screamed, and he showed no sign of stopping as he got closer and closer to my bed. Tears ran down my face as I tried to figure out what I was going to do. Then, out of nowhere, I heard it. This same deep growling noise that Max had made earlier that day. He may have made it past my dog, but once Max truly sensed I was in danger, he stepped in. Peter hadn't closed the door behind him, and when he turned to try to calm Max down this time, it didn't work. Max lunged at Peter and managed to knock him backwards, which gave me time to run past him and out of the house. I ran through my yard and over to my neighbor's house. They answered the door and then let me inside while we waited for the police to show up. When they got to my house, they found Peter laying on the floor of my bedroom with bite marks all over both of his arms. As for Max, as soon as I was safe, he made his way out of the house and was sitting in the neighbor's yard as if he was waiting for me to come outside. Peter was arrested for trying to attack me, and I'll never forget Max for saving my life that night. He's the best dog a girl could ask for. The first thing I did when I moved onto my new property was start taking my dog Blue out on walks to explore the trails that were down the road, and he couldn't have been happier. The first time we went on a walk down there, he must have met 3 different dogs that were all very friendly and made his day. And the same thing happened the next time we went, and then the time after that too. There was only one day that we went to our walking trails and didn't see a single other dog there, and that's probably a good thing too, because we almost didn't make it out. It was just after 6 p.m., and the sun was still up but on its way down, so that trail was pretty dark. That never bothered us though. Blue and I walked down the trail to our usual spot and then turned around. We were about halfway down the trail on our way back when out of nowhere, Blue just stopped. That usually never happened. So instead of trying to pull him, I stood there for a minute and just looked around to see what he was so focused on. But I couldn't see anything. Plus by then it had gotten even darker out. So I decided to tell Blue to come on and started walking again, expecting him to just start following like he usually did. But for some reason, he just stood there. "Come on, let's go home," I said to Blue, but was surprised when someone else responded. "You're not going anywhere," a voice called out from further up the trail. Blue started to growl as a man stepped out from behind one of the trees. My eyes widened as I focused on the gun that he was holding in his hand and pointing in our direction. The man kept walking toward us, and I put my hand on the top of Blue's head as I wondered what he wanted. "Look, man, I started to say as I explained that I didn't have any money on me. That wasn't the answer he was looking for though, as he claimed that everyone that lived in that area had money. I tried again to explain that I didn't have anything on me, which was when he turned his attention to Blue. The man kept the gun pointed at me, but he was now looking down at my dog with a dark smirk on his face. That was when he said that I was going to have to leave my dog with him while I went and got him what he wanted. I told him that I wasn't going to leave my dog, but before I could finish my sentence, he shoved the gun even closer to my face. "Now, give me the leash," he said with his hand extended. I was shaking at that point and didn't know what to do. I didn't want to get killed, but there was also no way in hell I was going to let him have Blue. My mind was filled with panicked thoughts and my heart continued to race when I heard the sound of the man cocking the hammer back on his gun. I looked down at Blue, who could clearly sense that I was freaked out, only he wasn't as hesitant as I was. Blue let out a deep snarl-filled bark as he lunged forward and bit the man on his upper thigh. He fell backward, which caused his finger to pull on the trigger, and the sound of a single gunshot rang through the air. I checked myself to see if I had gotten hit, but figured he must have shot up at the sky as he was falling backward. I grabbed Blue's leash and ran as fast as I could down the trail and back towards my house, with Blue pulling me the entire way. I got inside and called the cops to let them know that someone had just tried to steal my dog and that they had a gun. It didn't take them long to get to the trail, but they couldn't find the guy who threatened us with the gun. All they could find were traces of blood from when Blue bit him. I warned all of my neighbors about the trail and to keep their eyes peeled, but that was the only time anything like that ever happened in that area.